Good morning. I'm Carmen McBride, and I am on the family ministry team. My pronouns, I don't want to forget those, they are she and her, and I'm also involved with Voice and the Alliance. So I welcome you to First Unitarian Church this morning, where our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and pursue the common good. We welcome you in your brokenness and in your wholeness, no matter who you have been, who you are, or who you are becoming. We greet you today with love. I'd like to extend a welcome to everyone who's watching us on YouTube this morning. During the prelude, please introduce yourself in the comments section and let us know where you're from. If you're from Oklahoma City, what neighborhood do you live in? And if you're somewhere else, what city do you live in? And now the prelude prepares us for worship.
There seems to be a common perception that the song that we'll be playing in a minute, Dry Bones, is a song for Halloween. And that's really kind of understandable because you've got all these dry bones laying around. But it's actually a story from Ezekiel 37, which is the 26th book in the Old Testament. And the words from the song are based on the event in the life of the children of Israel and the high priest Ezekiel, when the leaders and those who were most learned of the children of Israel were taken by force from Jerusalem, their home, to Babylon as captives and slaves in the year 597. The story can resonate with those who have left their homelands, especially those forcibly wrenched from it. We can remember the Native Americans, the Africans packed on slave ships, and Japanese Americans in internment camps, and even today with the wars that we're facing. The children of Israel, now as slaves in a foreign country, felt that they had been deserted by their God. Their hopes were dead. In the story, the Lord takes Ezekiel to a valley full of dry bones. As the story proceeds, Ezekiel witnesses the bones coming together, in a sense, coming to life again. Thus, the toe bone connected to the foot bone connected to the ankle bone connected to the leg bone, so on. The Lord says to Ezekiel, "Say to my people, O my people, I will put my spirit within you, and you shall live, and I will place you on your own soil, that you shall know that I, the Lord, have spoken and will act." So the story ends for the children of Israel in hope. The story of a people restored to their land in a rebuilt temple and a new society of peace and prosperity. So, for anyone who has lost hope and courage, this song is for you.
Dim bones. Hear the word of the Lord. Ankle bone. Leg bone. Knee bone. Thigh bone. Hip bone. Backbone. Shoulder bone. Neck bone. Head bone. neck bone, shoulder bone, toe bone, hip bone, thigh bone, knee bone, leg bone, ankle bone, foot bone, toe bone,
Good morning. My name is Tim Atkins, and I serve as your Director of Lifespan Religious Exploration. I'm wearing a purple striped gingham shirt with rainbow glasses. I'm both big and tall, and my pronouns are he and him. We light the chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together. The burning chalice represents the light of reason and science, the warmth of loving community, the cleansing heat of justice, and the flame of hope.
My name is Reverend Diana Davies, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And for those who are joining us today who are blind or have a visual impairment, I am a white woman with silvering hair wearing my white clergy robe and my green stole. At First Unitarian, we share our pronouns and self-descriptions in a spirit of inclusion. And in that same spirit, I want to remind you that there are always large print orders of service and hymnals available from our ushers in the back of the congregation. Our opening hymn today is an African American spiritual that would have been first sung during the period of slavery. And as a mostly white congregation, anytime we sing a song with this kind of history, it is critical that we understand who created it and how it was sung and why. So a little background, in the early 19th century, enslaved African Americans sang without any hymn book, and songs were composed on the spot as people labored or attended camp meetings. And the music was a way of encouraging one another or expressing personal feelings. But some songs also contained secret messages that only other enslaved people and an immanent God could understand. Some of those coded messages related to escape from slavery. Home in those songs can mean heaven, but it can also mean a place of freedom. And the way one would get home might be by riding a chariot or a train. So songs like Swing Low, Sweet Chariot have a spiritual meaning, but they were also directly referring to the Underground Railroad. The spiritual we're going to sing this morning has just this kind of double meaning. Hush might have been sung when an enslaved person was planning to escape, as a notice and a warning to others. It captures both the strong call to freedom and the terror of hearing one's name called by an angry overseer. It emphasizes the need to remain quiet, during a dangerous escape, and at the same time, it is a song that bears meaning for anyone who has ever felt the call to courageous action and who wonders, what shall I do? As we sing, let all these layers of meaning be present in our heart and our voices. Let's just sing the first 3 verses today. It is number 1040 in the teal soft-bound hymnal, Hush. Please rise in body or in spirit.
Somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Yeah.
Please be seated.
So before I begin my story today, a quick straw poll. Raise your hand if you think you're a leader. Okay, all right. Now raise your hand if you think you see someone sitting by you that you would call a leader. All right, notice more hands on that one. That's interesting. So let's begin our story. Courtney loved helping make things happen. Now, Courtney was not usually the first person to come up with the idea. That wasn't her style. But she loved it, and she loved helping others make their ideas happen. In fact, just last week, Carrie had the idea that they could really use some more colorful pamphlets for the welcome table, and came back this week with beautiful material to use. She wore the title of Worker Bee Proudly, and would help make others' ideas happen. But Courtney certainly wasn't a leader. A leader is the one who makes the decisions, not the ones who make it happen. People like Carrie, they were the real leaders. Well, Carrie loved welcoming people to her second home. She loved helping out at the welcome table and loved introducing visitors to the joy she had experienced as part of the church. Every morning, she would arrive early and set up the greeting table with all sorts of helpful information. And just last week, she thought the table could use an upgrade, got some help, and made it even more appealing for newcomers. It was her personal mission to make her second home a home for everyone who walked through those doors. But Carrie wasn't a leader. The true leaders are those who go out of their way to make others feel included. People like in the morning religious exploration classes, they were the real leaders. Well, Zach loved his Sunday morning RE class. He was a proud member of the first grade class, and he loved his teachers and loved his fellow students. And all week, he looked forward to coming to the church on Sunday morning. Well, this morning they were doing an activity in their classroom that involved everyone getting up and talking to each other. Normally he would have loved this because Zach loved to talk. But he also knew that Billy didn't like to talk to strangers that much. So he went to the teachers and asked to speak with them in the hallway outside, and he told the teachers he was worried that the activity wouldn't be good for the whole class because it wouldn't include Billy too. His teachers thought about it for a minute and knew he was right. His teachers thanked him and called him a leader. But Zach certainly wasn't a leader. He just wanted to make sure everyone was included. People like his teachers, now they were the real leaders. Well, Deborah loved babies. Deborah was never to have any children of her own, and now that she was in her grandmotherly years, she wished she had some grandchildren to play with. She found that volunteering in the nursery not only helped new parents enjoy the Sunday morning service, but that it really fulfilled a need inside her too. Last week, she noticed that some of the toys were starting to get a little dirty, and the more she looked, the more she realized the nursery could use a good cleaning and a good toy sorting. She spent a lot of time over that week working on the nursery, making it look as good as possible for the babies and infants that would be playing there Sunday mornings. The families noticed the difference and thanked Deborah for her work and called her a leader. But Deborah certainly wasn't a leader. She just wanted those babies and toddlers to have the best nursery possible. The people who organize for justice, now they're the real leaders. Well, Ben, he loved social justice. He was passionate about living his values in the world, and he wanted to make the world a better place. He knew it was important that there would be people who helped with the immediate problem and served, and that there were people who advocated so the problem wouldn't exist anymore. He thought of himself as part of the latter and tried to attend a lot of different protests, marches, and rallies, and every week he was at the church behind his usual table and more often than not had some sort of petition for people to sign. But Ben certainly wasn't a leader. He just wanted to help make the world a better place. People who help with pastoral care and make sure everyone's cared for, those are the real leaders. Well, Viola loved to cook. She loved cooking great big meals for the church, and others would always volunteer to help her cook those large meals. She delighted in making sure everyone had a home-cooked meal and loved volunteering with the caring committee. When someone was in need, from sickness or a death in the family to just needing a little extra help that month, she would always sign up to make dinner a few nights a week for the family. She thought a home-cooked meal could make any difficult situation a little bit better. But Vi certainly wasn't a leader. She just wanted to cook for her friends. The children of the church, they're the real leaders. Well, Christy loved playing outside. Camp was their most favorite place in the whole world. Sure, they liked their classes, but camp, that's where the magic happens. They loved playing with their friends from RE class, but also loved playing with their friends from other RE classes too at camp. Every year at camp, they would do their best to organize all the other kids there to play a game together where everyone could win. When they ran out of ideas to play at the camp, Christy asked their daddy for help, and they went to the library together and found all sorts of different games that they could play. But Christy wasn't a leader. They just wanted everyone to play together. The really nice coffee lady, she's the real leader. Well, Kathy loved coffee hour. She loved the fellowship that happened at coffee hour and how people would take the time to really get to know each other and find out each other's joys and sorrows. Every week, she would get to the church extra early and not just make the coffee, but set out and then later clean up the coffee cups, sugar and cream, and oh so much more. It was her service and how she gave back to the community. But Kathy certainly wasn't a leader. She just took care of the coffee. Leaders have to do more important things than coffee hour. And on. I could do this for hours, right? It could go on forever. Courtney, Carrie, Zach, Deborah, Ben, Viola, Christy, and Kathy were all people who didn't see themselves as leaders, but they saw other people as leaders, and other people saw them as leaders too. You know, people can be funny like that. They don't like to see themselves as a leader when in fact, they're leaders too. So let's try this straw poll again. How many of you now think of yourself as a leader? A few more hands up. Come on. All right. When people hear the word leader, they often think of the person at the very top of the top. But leadership means more than just one person. It takes all kinds of leaders to make something happen, and it takes all kinds of leaders to make our church happen too. Whenever you are speaking up for what's right, helping someone else, or taking care of someone else, you're being a leader too. And the world needs all kinds of leaders just like you. The end. So now is the time in our worship where we process off to our religious exploration classes. Today, our pre-K through first grade class is learning about the golden rule through the use of otters. And our second through fourth grade class begins learning about Guardians of the Galaxy by discovering what they have in common with each other. Please join me in singing Go Now in Peace. And children, youth, and teachers, as we process off to our classrooms.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Webster, and I am president-elect of the congregation. Thank you. Every Sunday, we take an offering. Since 2002, all the cash and designated checks from that offering have gone directly to external nonprofit organizations doing good work, our Change for Change partners. For the month of October, our Change for Change partner is Freedom Oklahoma. Freedom Oklahoma advocates and organizes across the state and within the 39 sovereign tribal nations that call this land home to build a future where all two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and fuller spectrum people whose sexuality or gender or romantic identity exists beyond a heteronormative binary framework, what we call 2SL LGBTQ+, so they can have safety to thrive. Freedom Oklahoma was nominated as this month's Change for Change partner by our Radical Welcoming team in honor of LGBTQ History Month. For those of you who are in the sanctuary with us today, in just a moment we'll be passing the offering plate. If you are not able to make a gift today, we invite you to offer a blessing to the work of our Change for Change partner as the plate passes through your hands. And if you're watching us online, please make your gift by sending a check to First Unitarian, write Change for Change in the memo line, or you can make an online payment through our website, oneuc.org.
Though I may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire and have not love, my words are vain as sounding breath and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so, my love profess, but not begin. By love we lead, the prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are free.
Such a beautiful song and beautiful words. Acting on one's beliefs, despite danger or disapproval, the ability to do something that frightens you, strength in the face of pain or grief or difficulty, all these are definitions of courage. To me, it's also having the strength to go on, to do what needs to be done. There are times we roar and speak out loud with courage, but mostly in our day-to-day lives, it's quiet courage that gets us to act. It's having strength to get up to face the day, to help ourselves and each other with the challenges that lie ahead. When I was a kid, I loved to read, and I still love reading, just not as much time. My parents signed me up for a Book of the Month club, and every month or two a new book would come that I'd be waiting anxiously to read. The Wind in the Willows, The Wizard of Oz, My Friend Flicka, and many more. I generally liked fiction, and so I left Profiles in Courage by John F. Kennedy as one of the last to read. I still have that book. Then, a surprise to me, it became one of my favorites. So of course, when I was working on this reflection, I had to skim through it again to remember exactly why it struck a note with me. So these are the words that I found by Kennedy that had meaning to me, and I paraphrased it for you. Courage doesn't require exceptional qualifications or a magic formula, no special combination of time or place or circumstance. Sooner or later, it is an opportunity that's presented to each of us. We have to decide the course that we will follow. We live life doing what we must, in spite of personal consequences, obstacles, or pressures, in order to do what is morally right. It's when we stand against the flow of opinion on highly contested issues. So, a couple of instances came to my mind when I was thinking about quiet courage. The first thought was about the main characters in the film Hidden Figures. You may remember that from a few years ago. It's based on the book by Margot Lee Shetterly. The movie takes place in the early 60s. Katherine Goebel Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson were African American mathematicians. They were part of a group called the West Computers, so named because of the area that they were from. They were human computers before we had the other kind of computers in our little cell phones these days. So they worked on equations every day to further space research at the Langley Research Center in Virginia. Along with others, they were often reminded that they were second-class citizens, like the sign in the dining hall that said colored computers. One of the women, Marion Mann, courageously took the sign one day and put it in her purse. The next day, the sign reappeared. She put that sign in her purse, and she kept putting the sign into her purse until that sign disappeared. Those human computers suffered separate bathrooms, restricted access to meetings, housing, segregated buses, and rundown schools, yet they kept going, quietly and perhaps sometimes not so quietly. They were the helpers. They persevered. Mary became NASA's first female African-American engineer. Dorothy was the first African-American supervisor, and Katherine co-authored the Stafford Space Capsule reports and calculated the trajectories for the Apollo 11 and the Space Shuttle missions. She went on to receive the Medal of Freedom, and in her honor, recently NASA's Langley Research Center became the Katherine Johnson Computational Building. My second story is one that's more personal. One day, about 8 years ago, I went to check on my dad in his office. Never one to loaf, and still at about the age of 85, he was sorting through his papers, and I asked how he was doing. His reply to me was, "Oh, I'm getting old." I said something like, "Oh, Dad, you're still doing pretty well." And then the years rolled on. Now, my mom is the same age. I, along with my siblings, am part of that sandwich generation, now taking care of aging parents and having young adult children. Sharing my journey as a caregiver, a helper, I offer this poem, envisioned from both caregiver and receiver viewpoints. In the blink of an eye, in my mind I see what was and what is. I look at what used to be, but try not to, and instead try to focus on what is at this moment, because what other option is there? I've had a good life. What happened to my life? Who is the nurturer? Who is the nurtured? A constant back and forth between reality and a dream. We get tired, oh, so tired, but there are moments of joy, of laughter, mingled with sorrow and tears and fears and hopes, and the known and the unknown. Running out of time, too much time, days become blurs. We take each day as it comes. We are not alone. Walking this path with countless others. We are in this together, 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 not alone, together.
Many of us are enjoying these beautiful days of fall as the leaves are finally changing colors. But I know that many of us are also really struggling right now, struggling with the news out of Israel and Palestine, and seeing as violence and hate overlaps into this country as well. Many of our community have been especially touched by the recent death of Fern Galindo, who took their own life a couple of weeks ago at the age of 38. And Fern founded the Tulsa Intersectional Care Network, which is a grassroots organization that connects community members, who are especially disabled, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and queer folks with essential resources like food and housing assistance and transportation. And I just want to remind you, if you are struggling, especially if you are a trans or non-binary person, Trans Lifeline is a fantastic resource. I just want to lift that name up. At difficult times like this, I fall back on my spiritual practice for strength. And a spiritual practice that I have found particularly meaningful is something called Lectio Divina. And Lectio Divina is a reading. Originally it might have been scripture, but it can be anything. It can be poetry, it can be prose, it can be, I guess it could be the phone book. That would be a challenge. But anything that is meaningful to you, and reading with an ear for the sacred, for what the sacred is saying to you. So as our prayer or meditation today, I want to offer a poem by Maya Angelou, and I offer this to you and hope that you will listen with your heart, listen for the voice of the sacred, what is speaking to you. This poem is called A Brave and Startling Truth, and it was inspired by Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot. You might want to listen if you're familiar for that. Where is the reference to Pale Blue Dot? This poem was actually carried on the first test flight of NASA's Orion spaceship. This poem went into space. We, this people, on a small and lonely planet, traveling through casual space, past aloof stars, across the way of indifferent suns, to a destination where all signs tell us it is possible and imperative that we learn a brave and startling truth. And when we come to it, to the day of peacemaking, when we release our fingers from fists of hostility and allow the pure air to cool our palms, when we come to it, when the curtain falls on the minstrel show of hate and faces sooted with scorn are scrubbed clean, when battlefields and Colosseum no longer rake our unique and particular sons and daughters up with the bruised and bloody grass to lie in identical plots in foreign soil. When the rapacious storming of the churches, the screaming racket in the temples have ceased, when the pennants are waving gaily, when the banners of the world tremble stoutly in the good, clean breeze. When we come to it, when we let the rifles fall from our shoulders, and children dress their dolls in flags of truce, when landmines of death have been removed and the aged can walk into evenings of peace, when religious ritual is not perfumed by the incense of burning flesh and childhood dreams are not kicked awake by nightmares of abuse. When we come to it, we, this people, on this minuscule and kithless globe, who reach daily for the bomb, the blade, and the dagger, yet who petition in the dark for tokens of peace, we, this people, on this mote of matter, in whose mouths abide cantankerous words which challenge our very existence. Yet out of those same mouths come songs of such exquisite sweetness that the heart falters in its labor and the body is quieted into awe. We, this people, on this small and drifting planet, whose hands can strike with such abandon that in a twinkling life is sapped from the living, yet those same hands can touch with such healing, irresistible tenderness that the haughty neck is happy to bow and the proud back is glad to bend. Out of such chaos, of such contradiction, we learn that we are neither devils nor divines. When we come to it, we, this people, on this wayward, floating body, created on this earth, of this earth, have the power to fashion for this earth a climate where every person can live freely without sanctimonious piety, without crippling fear. When we come to it, we must confess that we are the possible. We are the miraculous, the true wonder of this world. That is when, and only when, we come to it. Amen. Our anthem is I Choose Love by Mark Miller. There's a quote by Fred Rogers that seems to show up on social media whenever there is a major tragedy. Usually this day is a bombing or a mass shooting. In this quote, Mr. Rogers remembers when he was a boy and would see frightening things in the news. Quote, "My mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.' To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I am always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in this world." Unquote. Since the beginning of the war in Israel and Palestine, I've been busy looking for helpers. I don't mean the soldiers following commands or the politicians arguing over military support. I don't mean the dazed and ash-covered people digging through rubble, desperately looking for signs of life. It's been easy to find stories about heroes. The grandfather who drove his car through a barrage of gunfire to save his grandchildren from Hamas attackers. Or the young Israeli woman who ran from house to house, alerting people that their kibbutz had been infiltrated. Or the small bands of just regular people who fought off terrorists in their front yards. All these people should be lauded for their courage. But heroic efforts for the sake of saving a family member or your own neighborhood, they're different, I think, than the work of helpers who are just doing their job, just doing what they would at any time, just because it's the right thing to do. So far, the news out of the Middle East hasn't included many stories about helpers. Maybe that's just the nature of war. The stories that emerge first are dramatic tales of superhuman heroism. It's only much later, when the war is over and people have come out of hiding, that the stories of quiet courage emerge. It's only then that we can really see the helpers. If you look hard enough, though, you can start to find them. There's the story of Yusuf Azianda, who is a citizen of Israel but is a Bedouin. He'd been hired to bring 9 people to the Nova Rave, a music festival in an open field near the Gaza border, at which 260 Israelis were killed. Early in the morning of October 7th, he got a message that there had been a rocket siren. And when he arrived to pick up his passengers, he was met with gunshots and people running and screaming. He loaded 30 people into his 14-seater van and he drove them to safety. Later, one of the passengers said, quote, "The only reason we got out of there was Yusuf, an Arab Bedouin from the south. Even when the terrorists shot at us from every direction, he did not drive away and leave us alone. He waited, collected people, and rescued everyone he could on his way," unquote. Now, Yusuf might have driven right past Awad Darawashe, who was a 23-year-old paramedic working at the Tribe of Nova festival tent. Awad came from a Palestinian Arab family, descendants of Palestinians who stayed in Israel after 1948. Moments after the first grenades went off and gunfire was heard, injured people began flooding into the paramedic station. And when it became clear what was going on, the station's leader told the paramedics to evacuate. But Awad refused to leave. He was doing his job. And he figured that as a speaker of Arabic, he could somehow mediate with the attackers. He was shot to death while bandaging one of the injured. Even now, there are healthcare workers in Gaza who are refusing to leave their patients behind, even if it means their own lives are in danger. There are aid workers who are just waiting to be able to help, no matter how dangerous the situation may be. And most of these are people who will never be written about as heroes. They are the helpers, and theirs is a quiet courage, sometimes even an anonymous courage. Throughout history, there have been countless people who've never had a moment in the spotlight, who just kept doing what was right as best they could, even if it meant little or no recognition. And many of these might have been introverted folks who prefer a form of leadership based in listening and empowering others and doing all the behind-the-scenes work that is rarely rewarded, but that is so incredibly important. But whether you're an introvert, an extrovert, or somewhere in between, an ambivert, the fact of the matter is, I hate to break it to you, that most of us will never be famous. Most of us will not be leaders in the spotlight or publicly recognized heroes, but we can all be helpers. And in many ways, this is the highest and most difficult of aspirations. Because helpers are not set apart from the rest of humanity. Helpers, by the very nature of who they are and what they do, are right there in the thick of humanity, in the thick of everyday life, constrained by everyday concerns and responsibilities, including responsibilities to family and others who rely on them for food and care and kindness. To be a helper, then, with all these constraints, is a kind of yoga, a kind of spiritual practice. In ancient India, going back all the way to the 5th century BCE, Hindu sages developed this idea of dharma. Dharma is a difficult term to translate succinctly, but in effect, it means the thing you must do to be true to who you are and what your society and your world need of you. For these same ancient sages, Dharma looked different depending on a person's stage in life. The first stage, from childhood through young adulthood, was called brahmacharya. And this was the life of the student, a time of learning with few responsibilities, except the responsibility of preparing for the future. During the second stage of life, according to this ancient Hindu philosophy, the focus shifted to family and community. The person at this stage of life was known as a householder, and now they were limited in their ability to focus on higher things because they needed to be concerned with earning a living and making a home. The third stage, roughly from age 50 to 75, so I'm way into this stage, was a time of eldership, when following the Dharma meant retreating to a hut in the forest, renouncing material concerns, and centering on wisdom. The final stage was sannyasa, and this meant being a wandering recluse with no home, no responsibilities, no physical concerns, focused only on merging with the divine. Now, many of us may dream of retiring to a cabin in the woods, or of spending our last years traveling around the country or the world without a care in the world, but that's not really what the Vedic sages had in mind. For them, life was movement toward greater connection with the divine. And that second householder stage offered special challenges because it was during that time that spiritual life needed to be balanced with physical pleasures and material concerns. Because think about it, otherwise, you couldn't have children being born and raised and food being produced and homes couldn't be built and society couldn't be continued. In effect, the householder stage was what allowed for all of the other stages of life. Well, today, of course, in the West, in a capitalist society that scarcely recognizes the wisdom, let alone the independence of elders, we live most of our lives in the householder stage. Now, it's important to understand that the householder is not some kind of lazy alternative to the Dharma. As I mentioned before, for the ancient Hindus, it was this way of life that was most challenging because it required a yoga, which just means a yoking or a deep connection of the spiritual with the material. It's never been easy to lead a good life, to do the right thing, to stay focused on God or the goddess or life or whatever your name for the ultimate source of love is, even as we are constrained by children and elderly parents who need our care, by spouses struggling with illness or dementia, by the need to pay the bills and do the laundry and wash the dishes and walk the dogs or change the kitty litter. It's never been easy to have quiet courage, to be a helper. And yet, every single day, everywhere in the world, even in places of war, even here in Oklahoma, people rise up and they do what must be done. Quietly, courageously, not recognizing themselves as the householder yogis that they are, not recognizing themselves as the heroic helpers that they are, just doing the work of love and care. Amazing, everyday, powerful, average people. In times of tragedy, in times of disaster, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. You will always find people who care. And if the time comes that you look around and you are unable to find the helpers, be comforted. Because in that moment, you are the helper. May it be so. Would you please rise in body or in spirit for our closing hymn? This is in our gray hardbound hymnal. It's another spiritual, so sing this with life. This Little Light of Mine, number 118. Let's do, the 3 verses.
Okay.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of love and community which burns on in our hearts.
I'd like to remind you that after our service today, all are welcome into Daniel Hall for coffee. And if you are interested, after the service, after you have a chance to go and grab something to drink, we invite you to come back into the sanctuary. The board will be leading a Q&A, town hall, about the next steps in the ministerial transition. So you're welcome to grab a coffee or lemonade and come back for that. I leave you now, though, with this benediction from Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson. Hush, somebody's calling your name. Can you hear it? Calling you to a past not quite forgotten, calling us to a future not fully imagined. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling our names. What shall we do? Be a light unto the world. Be helpers that need you so badly. May it be so.